Hi everyone, welcome to another Ashtown Creations tutorial. My name is Stephanie, and in this video we are making the Vamp by Seems Legit. All of the fabric, interfacing hardware, and the pattern for this wristlet came in the subscription box, so I decided that I would use it all when I recorded this video. The bag features quilted exterior panels and piping along the center panel, a wrist strap, a twist lock, closure at least for my bag, and an internal zipper pocket. The lining fabric is Barnyard Animals Doing Yoga, so I thought I would try to find a neat embroidery or quilting design for one of the main panels, since the rest of the exterior is quilted. So I found this cute little quilting design with pigs. This is the first time I have ever quilted on vinyl. It's also the first time I have ever added real piping to a bag. I have done faux piping, but never real piping. Many of the materials for this bag can be found on the Seems Legit website. I will link them and the pattern in the description box below. I will also list the timestamps so you can jump to the section that you need. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and select the notification bell to be notified when new content is available. Please leave any questions or comments in the comment section below. I will do my best to respond as soon as I possibly can. Thank you to Tori from Seems Legit for allowing me to record this tutorial for you. Now let's get sewing. Alright, let's go through the pieces for this Vamp wristlet. So as I probably mentioned in my intro, I bought a subscription package from Seems Legit, and it included everything I needed to make this wristlet. So I'm actually making a video with the fabric that I received from Tori at Seems Legit. So starting with the center panels, I have two center panels. One just has a chalk line on it so that I'll go through marking out the crisscross pattern that we will be quilting. And this one I decided, since the lining fabric is Animals Doing Yoga, that I would do a cute little quilting design of those are little pigs on it. So I've gone ahead and I've done the embroidery on this, and I've done the quilting on the bottom part. I will show the quilting on the other part. So we have two center panels. We have four side panels. They get quilted like this. I've done two of them already. I've marked one already with my chalk lines. I just used my Choco pen. And then I have one that's blank that I will be showing how I did that. Then we have two inner tops. So inside the top part, the zipper is kind of recessed in there. So we've got two top parts. I'm going to make a D-ring connector out of this. The wristlet strap, and this bag has piping. So I didn't have enough for one full piece, so there's two pieces that we will be wrapping the piping cord in. So we've got two lining pieces. These are Quilting Cotton, cute yoga animals. Quilting Cotton I've interfaced with a woven interfacing. And then we have one zippered pocket lining. There is a zipper included. So this was all included, hardware was all included. So there's a turn lock, and it's rose gold turn lock. There's a D-ring and a swivel clasp. It's the washer to the lock, a zipper pull, a zipper slider, and even a rivet included. Also included in the box was this corner template. So we'll be using this, making this bag as well. So that is all of the pieces for the Vamp wristlet. As I mentioned when we were going through the pieces, my one main panel already has an embroidery design on the top. I chose to do that to kind of reflect what's inside on the fabric inside the pouch, and I've already stitched my lines for the more square diamond shape quilting on the bottom. So now we're going to work on the empty panel. I have got my line drawn across the top or bottom, across the bottom, I guess it's this way, I've got my line drawn across the bottom, and I've also marked the center. So we're going to start from the center and mark our 45-degree lines. Hopefully you can see this. So on my ruler, I've got the 45-degree lines. So I have this ruler, it's a 6 by 12. I have 45-degree, this line here and this line here are 45 degrees. So I'm going to use those to mark my stitch lines on my piece. So what I want to do is match, so the line that we're going to use, the 45-degree line, I'm going to put along the bottom of the panel. Then I'm going to slide it over so that the side of my ruler meets the point in the center, meets that center line. So this, keeping that 45-degree line on the bottom of my panel, I'm going to take this is a Choco pen. This is filled, it's pretty full, it's filled with chalk, and it has a little wheel on the end. And it's good for this kind of thing, so you can easily wipe it away. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line, blow the excess away, and then I'm going to flip it so that I'm using the other 45-degree line this direction, so I get my line going this way, and match my angle, the side of my ruler angle, to go this direction. So I've got my lines, my angles going both ways. Now you can either use the 1-inch mark on your ruler, or if you have a 1-inch ruler, you can use this to mark the 1-inch, it's 1-inch separation between. You can choose to do more if you want. Just the pattern is 1 inch. So I'm going to lie my ruler down with the edge of it along that first line we drew, and I am going to then mark the next line 1 inch away and blow off the excess. So now you can see we have 1 inch apart. I'm going to keep going with this, and I'm going to go all one way first, and then I'm going to go all the other way. So I will do this sped up. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And then we'll move on to this side. All right, there we go. We have the finished main panel. Some of the little lines that I drew across the corners probably didn't need to get marked. They'll be in a seam allowance, but I just like having them. I'm going to stitch them anyways. Yeah, so putting this panel aside, we'll stitch it in a minute. I've got the side panels now to do. So I've already gone ahead and stitched the quilting on these two panels. So I'm going to set them aside. I have marked, you can see it, I have marked the lines with the Choco pen on this one. And now I'm going to mark on my blank one. All right, so I am going to start by measuring down the amount that it says in the pattern. So this is just to mark the seam allowance. The first one is just to mark the seam allowance, and then follow the instructions as to how far apart these lines are to be marked. And while I try to line up the correct measurement, I'm also using this little, I'm using the 7-inch mark, and I'm making sure that lies across the edge of my piece. So then it's more likely to be even. So line up the 7, and then see if we can line up the the previous chalk mark. And I lift it, I don't drag it, because dragging will smear the chalk lines. And we'll end there. So, yeah, so there we go, blow extra stuff off. So there we've got the lines marked. I didn't mark another one down here because there's a seam allowance down there. So I'm going to actually remove this top line now so that it doesn't confuse me. I don't need to stitch it. So I don't have any water around, so I'm just going to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol. It's not going to hurt it. Usually I just have water on a cloth. We'll take this off, but I don't have any right beside me. So this will work. So there we go. I'm just going to make sure that this one's clean. All right, there we have our pieces ready to go. I am going to turn around and move over to the sewing machine. I'm going to start with the main panel, and so I'm going to stitch along every line. You can stitch a line and snip it off and then start another line, go back and forth. I'm probably going to try and do as many lines as I can, so I'll come off, and then there isn't much of a space over here, so I may just jump down that little bit and follow the next line, depending on how they're placed on the pattern piece. So if I start over, I'm going to start on one side and just keep going. And there isn't going to be much of a pattern to this, order to this, I guess. It's just going to be as I decide which line I want to stitch. So I have it set on a 5-stitch length, and I'm going to start here, needle down, right on the line. And I am going to backstitch this even though I have tails. I'm just going to backstitch this one. I'm not going to backstitch all of the rest one. Actually, needle down. You don't need to backstitch, but I do need to hold my threads. And then we just start stitching along those lines. So I got to the end of where I could actually stitch. Oops, there we go. So I'm going to snip these off and then take another line to go to stitch on. I'm going to start on this one. All right, so I'm gonna go around, and so I've got all of my lines stitched. Pull this tight. I'm gonna go around, so I didn't really need to do this angle. It's just, this makes sure that it's caught in the bottom seam allowance and not left in the sides. Although it's not a huge deal, it's still, because this one is in the side. It should get caught in the seam allowance, but I'm gonna just pop this to the back. These ones to the back, so it doesn't come out the front, but it should get all caught in the seam allowance. I just don't want anything pinching, so you've got to be careful when you go to the corners that you don't pull too tight that it pinches it. Anyways, I'm going to set this aside, And I'm going to work on the side panels, the 2 side panels I have left. I find it easier if I do them 2 at a time, then I can kind of chain stitch it. So I'm going to do kind of the same thing, just go down and feed them all through and stitch all of those lines. Put the next one in. So I'm matching my chalk line up with my needle. I'm leaving my needle down. I'm butting my pattern, my piece up to my needle with the line right at the needle. And there we go. We have all 4 pieces now, side panels stitched, and we have the back. Actually, I'm going to make this the front and this the back. I realized after I did this that I don't want to cut these to put in the twist lock. So this is actually going to be the back and this will be the front. I'm going to take these and just go grab some water and clean up all of the marks, all of the chalk marks off of them. And then we'll move on to the next step. Now it's time to move on to make the piping. In the pattern, I believe you're supposed to cut 1 long piece for the piping. I didn't see that ahead of time, and by the time I got to cut out my vinyl for the piping, I didn't have enough in the length, but I have enough for all 4 because it goes 2 on the front and 2 on the back. So I have enough. I'm just going to have to do it in 2 pieces, whereas you would have 1 long piece. So I'm going to take some double-sided tape. This is a 1/4 inch leather tape, and I've marked a line down the center. This is not in the pattern, but I think this is going to make it easier for me. I can't remember ever making piping, so this is I'm going to say my first time making piping. And I'm trying to remember if I've even sewn piping on. Piping is one of those things that kind of scares me a little, which is fine. I'm trying something new. Hopefully I can get it to work and look nice in the end. So there, I've added it, double-sided tape all down the center of it. Now I'm going to peel the double-sided tape off. I'm going to take the cord for inside the piping, and I am going to start at one end and put it all down that center line. I'm going to just tap it into place. I'm not really pressing and smoothing. So I'm going to just trim this one off, and then I'm going to do the second one. I've done lots of faux piping where you just fold over fabric, make it stick out a bit, and it looks like it's piping, but I don't, feels like it's my first time doing with the cord. Anyways, so the next thing we need to do is fold this in half, and I'm actually going to clip it all the way along so that I can keep it even. So I'm matching up the long edges, which then puts the cord right in the center. You could use double-sided tape along the one edge if you want. My machine doesn't really like stitching over top of a lot of double-sided tape, so especially this heavyweight extra sticky leather tape. Do the same for the other. Now we want to stitch this closed, and in the pattern it says roughly center because we want to hold the piping in. It looks kind of like Tori is running her presser foot against the edge, which would be about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm assuming that's, yeah, about 1/4 of an inch would be half. So I'm going to switch to a 3.5 stitch length, put it under my presser foot at, so 1/4 of an inch. And actually, I think I'm going to have to switch my, switch out my presser foot because this one is a little too wide on the side. And so I've switched out because my sewing machine has a walking foot. I think it's called compound walking foot. There's two parts. There's the outside foot and the inside foot. I can leave the inside foot. I just changed the outside. So this one doesn't have, it's more of a zipper foot. It doesn't have the toe on the left side. It just has one on the right. So hopefully this will work. We're still only doing it from the 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And I'm going to back stitch at the start and the end of the seams, and I will do both. So as you can see from this one, I've already attempted to do it. It was shifting things off. So, and like even with the clips, it was still moving it. So I went and I've added down one of the long side a piece of double-sided tape that's only about an eighth of an inch wide. A little over an 1/8 of an inch wide. It should be okay. It should be not in our stitch line. So then I took the paper backing off, and now I'm just going to match the long edges all the way down, kind of like we did when we were clipping. It's just this time they'll be held together with double-sided tape. Set this one aside. I'm going to try this again with this foot. I noticed it wasn't moving things through very well. I wonder if this would work. No, it wasn't moving the fabric through very well, so my stitches ended up being really tight. So I'm going to switch it to a 5 stitch length just because I don't want a whole lot of really tight stitches. Back stitching at the start and the end of your seam, and I'll do both of them. There we go. We have 2, well, I have 2. You probably just have 1. Now I'm going to take the center panels and I am going to put the piping cord along the long edge of the center panels. So I'm going to do 1 on either side, and I get to the bottom here and I'm going to cut the piping, and then I'm going to flip this one over and attach it to the other side. And I'll do the same for the other piece. So I'm just gonna, for this one, I'm going to snip it in half, just so both sides have an even distribution. Now we want to stitch these in place just right over top of the other stitches we just put in the piping. So when we're stitching the piping closed, we are now going to attach it to the exterior, to the center panels, right over top of those stitches. So I will go ahead back stitching at the top, at the start and the end of my stitch lines on both pieces. There we go. We have the piping attached to both of the center panels. Now it's time to attach the side panels. So I've swapped out, I do have a piping foot for this machine. I swapped it out and tried it to see if it would work, and it's not bad. Doesn't look bad. So I'm going to go ahead with this, and I've added the panel to this. Now I'll go ahead and add the panels to this. So I take the panels, long sides, right sides together, long side against long side. Grab some clips and then clip it. Take the other panel, other side. I'm trying to match, trying to keep at least like them lined up at least on one end. They're a little bit off, but that shouldn't be a problem. It'll all get worked out in the seam allowance. So there we go. I've pinned all of them. Going back to this one. And now you need to stitch in according to the instructions. So it's further away than we did the first time, because you want to get closer. You want to get as close to the piping cord as possible. So you may not get it the first time, just go do it a first time, and then if you need to move it in again, one more stitch, then you can. So for now, I'm just going to do it as close as I can without going over, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. So having a look at my panels, I don't think the piping looks too bad, although I think it could go in a little bit more. You can also see down on the end, yeah, I could come in about another 1/16 of an inch, at least on those two. And yeah, I can come in a little bit on all of them. So I'm just going to come in a little bit on all of them and stitch a little bit closer and see if I can do it without stitching over the cord. I'm going to put my guide down to see if I can keep it right up against the guide, and that hopefully will help. Check that. It's not a huge difference. I'm not sure I'm going to get in any closer. You can see that I can start out, but then as I was getting in to where I stitched, it just went back into where I stitched before. So this is probably as close as I'm going to get. So I don't think I'm going to do the other seams. That was a good test, but now that we've stitched the piping and the side panels on, we want to cut back these about half of the width that's there. So I'm going to just cut it back, and I'll do all 4 seams. And there we go. Front and back panels all done. Moving on to the interior zipper pocket. I've taken my zipper pocket piece and I've folded it in half so that the short edges are meeting, creased it. I've marked it down. I've marked the rectangle on the piece as per the instructions. And I'd already done it once, and then I realized that my yoga animals would be upside down, so that's why I have two boxes. So this where you marked your box is going to be on the inside of the pocket. So you want to make sure the part that flops down when you close it is right way up. So if you're using directional fabric, fold it in half and keep the direction going the right way, and the panel, the part that's on top, is where you're going to mark your box. The only difference I've made from the pattern is I have made my zipper box a little bit wider than she has in the pattern. I've also marked up according to the pattern and found my did a snip in the middle of my lining piece. So now I need to put the lining piece, or put the zipper pocket along that line, matching up the center. So centered. Going to turn it around, put it under my needle, and I am going to stitch along both sides of the zipper pocket, or of the box we've drawn, and I'm at a 3.5 stitch length. I want to make sure it stays lined up, and I'll back stitch at the start and the end of the stitch lines. Right, snip off all of the extra threads, even the jump stitch at the end, far end. Now I'm going to fold this in almost half. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut into the center, and now I'm going to cut out to either side, about just a little, no less than a 1/2 inch to the corner, away from this end, because we're going to snip into the corners and you want to have a good amount of fabric to catch in your seam. If you feel more comfortable, you can draw this out when you draw your zipper box. I've done it enough that I don't need to draw it on anymore. So snipping out towards the side as close as you can to the stitches without cutting your stitches, and then out the other direction. Now we want to push this pocket lining through the hole and pull it to the back side. There we go. I am going to roll it between my fingers to try and get the edges nice. I'm also going to turn around and iron it so that I get a nice crisp edge. All pressed now. So now we need to add the zipper. So I've got my zipper tape. This is a little more difficult to see than my regular zips with the colored teeth, because these teeth don't stand out. But I see the coil at the top is on the right hand side, then it goes left, right, left, right. I'm going to open up my teeth. I'm going to put my zipper slider on the right side, and then I'm going to pop on the left, and I'm going to straighten my slider and try and keep it so that the tooth on the right hand side comes out first, because that way we know that the zipper is straight. And I managed to get it in the right order, and you can also tell that it's okay because there's no bulge on one side versus the other. So I'm going to move the zipper into the center. I am going to put a little tape. I'm going to put a little tape on either side. Find my 1/4 inch tape to just help me install this zipper. So right along, I'm putting it on right on the outside edge of the zipper tape. And I will do both sides. Now, you can tell which direction the zipper is closing because of if you look at the head of the zipper slider. If the either rounded or pointed part in this case is going towards where it closes. You can also check by doing that, moving it. So I want to put it in so that it's closing to the left. So I want it closing this way. I'm going to slip the zipper underneath the opening, and I'm going to try and line it up, not only even in the center of the zipper box, but I also want to make sure that I've got enough overhang on either side that I'm going to catch it in my seam of my zipper. Start with one side. I'm going to peel the tape off of one side. Oops, and it moved. Take my piece and try and center it this way. And my finger's stuck. Let's see how that looks. It's not bad. I think it could be a little bit closer. I'm going to turn it sideways so I can see it a little bit better. So I want it to be about that close there. That looks better. So now I'm going to flip this down, take this tape off, or this paper off this tape, and then try and place the other side down about even width, even distance away from the teeth. I'm a little off, so I'm going to adjust it. That's the one good thing with tape, is you can adjust it if you need to. If you're comfortable just sticking it under and trying to hold it, go for it. I usually do, but in this case I wanted to show this option. Okay, that's pretty good. So now I'm going to start down from the zipper slider. So I'm going to start down in here, go down to the end and up, move my zipper slider out of the way, just like Tori does in her videos, and then down and back. This is where I learned it from. Tori is who I learned this from. So anyways, under my needle, and I'm switching it to a 5-stitch length. This helps keep the zipper nice and straight in the box. I find when you've got the zipper teeth open, then you don't get it quite as nice where the opening was. It's hard to get it even. So, and I'm going to backstitch. There we have our pocket in. Now I'm going to fold it back down. Fold the pocket down, match up the bottom ends. We're going to leave the bottom of the pocket open. I'm going to clip along it though to keep it even for now. Going to pull the sides, the top lining piece away from the pocket, and then I'm going to stitch the side closed, and I'm going to put it on a 3.5 stitch length and backstitch. When I get close to the bottom, take that out, I'm going to fold the side up. This just helps with the clean edge when we go to close up the pocket. And do the other side. So I'm going to fold this end up to match the other side, and I'm going to stitch up the sides. Okay, now I'm going to pop these edges over both sides. And I'm going to press this. Actually turn around and literally press it with the iron. And there we have our completed zipper pocket piece. We're moving on now to the D-ring connector. So I have my D-ring here, it's the 1/2 inch, and then I have my pattern piece. So what we're going to end up doing is folding this over. We'll have one folded edge and one raw edge. I'm going to try and keep it as even as I can, but if I need to, I can trim it off later. I've also added a little bit of my 1/8 of an inch, I think it's a little more than an 1/8, less than a quarter, tape out of my seam allowance and out of my stitch area, and then I'm going to, just to help it keep it together, I'll take the tape, the backing off the tape, and then I'm going to fold it wrong sides together in half, just like that. So now I want to stitch 1/8 of an inch, so I'm going to top stitch, and I'm going to top stitch at about an 1/8 of an inch on both sides. I'm going to have it on a 5 stitch length. And I will back stitch at the beginning and the end of the stitch line. Not sure that it's really necessary because this part will be hidden in the seam. I just feel better doing it. All right, so this seam moved on me. It's going up and there's barely any on the edge. I didn't keep it at an 1/8 of an inch. So I'm actually going to take this out and re-stitch it properly so that there's room on the side to take off any extra that needs to be taken off, and that the stitches are nice and even distance apart. So it's not ideal. It happened on this because now I'm going to have holes. Hopefully they're not. Hopefully I can kind of get rid of them and they won't be that noticeable. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So I'm going to go over to my cutting station and I am going to trim this side so that it's nice and even. All right, I've trimmed up the edge. If you wanted, you could probably, edge coat this. I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to slip it on the D-ring and put it in like that. So we need to add it now to between our lining piece, bottom piece, and the lining top piece. And it needs to be a certain measurement in from the edge. That measurement is in the pattern. So I am going to put it in. I'm actually going to have it this side out. I'm not sure. I think that'd work. I think that'll be nice. So, and actually I'm going to stitch the ends first just to make sure it doesn't move. So I'm going to put the connector down. I am going to put the folded side in towards the center of the bag, and I'm going to clip it so that the outside of the connector is on the inside of that line or the mark we made, and I am going to clip it. So I'm going to now stitch it. I'm going to stitch it on. I'm going to start on top of the, move it in a bit more. I'm going to start on top of the D-ring connector, and I'll go forward and then back stitch, tacking it in place. Want to go over it a few times to make sure that it is in there pretty good. All right. Now grab one of the vinyl top pieces, put it face together with the lining bottom piece, and then clip it all the way out to the side, keeping the long edges even. Okay, do the same for the other side. So right sides together, long edges, matching up the long edge and clipping. Setting one of them aside, we're going to stitch on the top panel to the bottom panel. I don't see a measurement listed for the standard seam allowance for this section, so I'm going to assume it's the same for some of the other sections where there is a seam allowance mentioned. So I'm guessing on this and I'm hoping it works. And I'm setting it at a 3.5 stitch length, back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam. Go slow over your connector, and if you need something to help you over the hump, then this is fabric that came with this machine. I just use this piece of leather to help me. It's like a hump jumper. Get it under the foot, and I put it right at the behind the needle. Make sure your D-ring is out of the way. And I'm going to actually back and forth on this a couple times and then off. Now go ahead and do the other one. Now I'm going to fold the seam allowance down towards the bottom panel of the bottom lining panel, and I'm going to top stitch along the edge on my bottom lining piece. So moving it to a 5 stitch length, and I am going to back stitch, and I'll do the same for both panels. So now we need to cut out the corners of all of our pieces. I'm going to start with the, I think I might start with the exterior. Might be a little easier to see what I'm doing. And we need to cut out a square in the corner. So with the box that I got from Tori at Seems Legit, it has this boxed corner template. So you have the different markings for like a 1 inch, a 2 inch, 1.5, 2.5. So depending on what size corner you need for your boxed corner, you line up the template. So I'm going to, in the bottom of this, so how you do it, maybe I'll just use this one, it's a little easier to see, I think. So you need to line up, there's dotted lines at the top, and like at the top of each of the pieces. So each of these 4 pieces or sides have dotted lines. You need to put the dotted lines against each edge. So in this case, it's on there and there. And then this here would be the corner. That's not the actual dimension, so please don't go cutting it based on what I'm showing you. But that's how you would use this. So you cut that out, and when you sew it, you would end up with I think that's a 4-inch. So 2 by 2, I think, is a 4-inch seam. So I'm going to mark all of these using my template. You can also use a regular ruler and take the measurements, but this is kind of handy to have. So you just, I know I want this, so that's what I put it down, and I make sure that I've got the dotted lines matched up to each of the edges, and then I draw it out. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut the square out of the piece. And I'll go ahead and do this for all 4. So 2 exterior, 2 lining. I will go ahead and do this for all of them. All of my pieces are now cut. I just want to mention that you need to mark the corners and cut the corners out of the bottom of the piece. So not in the interior, not on the vinyl. If your inside is cotton, it'll be the cotton piece you'll cut it out of. Whatever the bottom part of the lining is, that is where you will cut. And then if you're like me and have some detail and it's got a direction, make sure that you're cutting it out of the bottom of the piece. So now we need to move on to the next section. Okay, so we're going to match. Now it's time to put the exterior and the lining pieces together. So I had a little extra. I've cleaned it off. It may have changed my box corners a little, but hopefully not too much. Looking at the pattern, it looks like we're supposed to nest the piping as best we can, as close as we can, and then clip on the bottom. So that's going to be quite the bulk to sew through. And then same on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and sew the bottom seam first and see how it goes. Bottoms are now stitched together. I think if I were to do this again, I would leave the cording out of the piping at the bottom. I would have the piping go down, and then right close to where the seam is, I would stop the piping. It just make it a little easier to go over. So this is the bottom of the bag, so it's not going to be seen. Not too bad. Probably could have gotten tighter on my piping there, but first time with piping, it's not too bad. So I'm going to go, I realized that I did it with a 5 stitch length. I'm going to go over it again, just a little bit to the side with a 3.5 stitch length to reinforce these stitches. Now I'm going to line up the sides and clip them. Now I'm going to stitch down either side. So I'm still on my 3.5 stitch length, so I don't have to go over this twice. So I am going to box the corners. So to box a corner, I'm sticking my hand in and I'm popping out that so that we can meet in the center seam. Open this up like that. So for exterior seams on, especially like for exterior seams, I like to butterfly them, especially with the bulk of vinyl faux leather cork. This is quite bulky with the fleece in there. So I butterflied or split the seam on this one. So I'm going to do the same on the other side. I'll stick my hand in, push it down, open this up, and then butterfly these seams, trying to keep the seam lined up in the center of that whole box. Now I want to stitch across it with the recommended seam allowance, and I'm still on a 3.5 stitch length, and I'm going to back stitch a few times over this. So back stitch at the beginning, try and make sure I get all of the pieces. I'm going to back stitch across the center and then back stitch on the other edge. Do the same for this side as well. So I'm starting in a little bit and go forward, and then I'm going to back up to the edge and then come back in, and I'm again going to back stitch over the center seam and then at the other edge. I don't see it anywhere in the pattern, but I am going to clip some of this excess off. I don't think we need all of the bulk. I'm going to leave, I'm going to start down around my first line on the side, so we have extra up here to help when we go to attach the lining. So I'm going to just trim some of this out. Trim some of this out if I can. Yep. And to this side. So start again down around the first row of stitching and just cut out about half. And then the end. There we go. And now I'm going to repeat the same thing for the lining piece. So matching up the bottoms and clipping. Actually, I'm going to match up these side seams here. I want those. There's not much else that really needs to be lined up, but this is nice if these can be lined up. Just makes it look like a nice finish. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side, so making sure that this edge and that edge are lined up. I think I can do the bottom. So I'm going to start on one side and go down. I'm going to, I'll keep it, I'm going to keep the same same seam allowance all the way around. Might make it a tiny bit smaller on the bottom of the lining. It doesn't say to do that, but it is nice to make it a little bit smaller so it fits in there a little more snugly. So back stitching at the beginning and the end of your seam, and then from here I'm just going to take it out another 1/8 of an inch, spin it around, go across the bottom with that same seam allowance that you did at the bottom of this seam, and back stitch still. Make sure your pocket is out of the way. All right, again at the same seam allowance that we've been using down here and here, And as we get up closer to the top, we will move back down to the starting seam allowance. Making sure that our D-ring is out of the way. And just like on the exterior pieces, I'm going to cut some of this down. So we don't need all this extra. Actually, I'm going to box the corners first. Make sure I have enough. I should have done it before I did that. So stick hand in. There's really not much of a corner here. I usually don't butterfly the seams, but then again, I'm usually using waterproof canvas for my lining. This is what came in the box, so this is what I'm using. Usually I nest the seams, so I get the fabric going one way on the top and one way on the bottom, and the seams are tight in together. Actually, I may as well just do that because I've got it here now. And I'm going to clip hand in, do the other side, so pull it out, and then again the seams are going different ways, opposite to each other. And now I'm going to stitch it across this with, I think, the seam allowance that I did up top here. And just like the exterior, I am going to back stitch over this where the seams meet. Now I'm going to trim this one down, trim some of the side seam down, but I'm not going to trim the top. I'm going to start in and then just go down the side. Same on the other side. And I've already done across the bottom, and so I'll just do this end. There we go. Moving on to joining the interior and the exterior, we need to take the lining piece and turn it right side out. Make sure our zipper pocket is open. And then we are going to insert the lining inside the exterior. So I've decided that the front of my bag is going to be the one with my label, because I don't really want to put the twist lock through my little piggies. So the back of my bag is there, and I usually like to have the zipper on the back of the bag. So stick it in, and then I'm going to match up the edges. This is why we left extra at the top, so we can spread these out nicely. We want to match up the side seams. And I'm going to clip it because I will be stitching it, I believe, from the inside. So clip those. I'm going to make sure I flip my D-ring down, want it out of the way. And then I'm going to match the other side seam. From there, I'm going to pull the sides out, have them meet in the center, and put a clip in. Then pull these out. I think I'm going to have all of the piping going in. So pull that out. I've pointed my piping in. It doesn't show which direction it's supposed to go that I can see. So I'll just have them all pointing in. And clip it. I'm going to put a couple more clips just to make sure it stays when I'm stitching it. And then do the same on the other side. So I'm pulling it out, working my way in, and then clipping the center, pulling this part, from between these two clips out, pointing my piping in towards the center panel and clipping. Same on this side. Adding a few more clips. And there we go. Now I need to get this under. I've got a 3.5 stitch length. So we are going to sew this together around the top. Again, I don't see a measurement for this, so I'm going to assume it's the same. And I am going to start in a flat spot in the middle of the back of the bag. So and back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. All done the stitching on. I'm pretty sure I caught it in all the spots. So in the pattern, it shows if you want to reduce the bulk in the top seam, you can cut out some of this extra. So I'm going to do that right now. So it looks like you just, trying to get it so I don't cut it myself or anything else. So you cut in like that, and then out. So you've taken a chunk out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the other spots. The one thing I am not going to cut, oh, it's down in there, so I don't have to worry about it. I was going to say I'm not going to cut my connector, but it's down in there, so I don't have to worry about that. Now I'm going to reach in and pull out my lining. I'm also going to put my hand in the zipper pocket, put my hand down to the other end, and push the bottom into my hand that's inside the bag and start pulling it through. And try and get it through the zipper pocket without ripping any of the stitches around the zipper. Stick my hand back in and pop out my boxed corners. There we go. I'm going to pop out this top seam. Ooh, bulky. And then push the lining back in. So we need to, so this part goes to the inside of the bag. So we need to top stitch with that down in. And I may not even top stitch this. I'll have to see. It's really, really, really thick. First thing, I should have taken the cord out of the piping. So I should have done it on the bottom and the top. Even though we've cut that chunk out, it still doesn't want to fold over and stay. I shouldn't have had the fleece all the way to the sides. That's causing a lot of bulk too. So I'm going to get this over and have a look and see if I absolutely need to top stitch this. Oh good, it looks like we don't top stitch. It looks like we don't top stitch this. We just want it to settle down on the inside, especially so that we can add our twist lock. For me, twist lock. I'm not sure what other people are adding. So yeah, we want this in. So I'm going to leave it just a little bit with clips on until I figure out my twist lock. Yeah, I'm glad I don't top stitch because I think that would wreck that neat little panel. Now we're going to add the male portion of the twist lock. So this is my male portion, the one with the sticky outy part. I needed to find the center of this. I'm centering it on the panel. So I folded it like this, matching up the piping, marked the center, and then from that center, I put the washer part down on this panel, top panel, with my silver marking pen on my vinyl. I marked the 2 holes. I gently took my X-Acto knife with my hand inside and gently slit the holes. Okay. I also grabbed a piece of Peltex that I'm going to stick behind the twist lock. So I'm going to put my hand in the bag, so pulling out this zipper pocket so I can get my hand right in the bag. I'm going to put the Peltex in, and now I'm going to stick the male portion in through these 2 slits that I made. I don't know if you can see it. So there, I've got that. I'm going to take my Peltex and I'm going to place it on the prongs, just like that. Put my washer on. I am going to spread my prongs out. Some people go out, some people go in. I have enough Peltex there to protect it, so these are really, really stiff. All right, so there, that's on. The only thing I'm going to do before I move on, well, actually I'm gonna see if I can crimp it down a little bit more. Not a whole lot, but it's a little bit better than it was. Okay. Don't really want them sticking up too much. Okay, the only other thing I'm going to do is place some tape. Now I usually use duct tape, but I just realized I don't have any at my table, so I'm just going to use some of this 1/2 inch double-sided tape. So I'm just going to snip off a bit, leave the paper on, and then put it over the prongs, just to try and keep them from rubbing too much and cutting a hole in the fabric. So now I can push this back in for now, because we'll have to, yeah, I can push it in for now. So there we go. We've got the male part installed. I'm going to, now we need to install the female portion. Okay, I think I have it. So when I put this piece on, so this is the other side, I found that it sat nicely about 1/8 of an inch up from my top stitched edge inside. I probably could have measured down from the other side, doesn't matter, it should work out. So I measured up on this side, I measured up about 1/8 of an inch up from my top stitched edge. I took my pieces apart, sometimes they come apart, sometimes they come together, and I placed the backing of the female part at the 1/8 of an inch above the stitch line, and then I marked a box. So yeah, I placed it, tried to center it, then I drew a box with my silver marking pen. So that is the box that we are going to cut out. Now I am going to actually use, so I would, if you don't have, like I have my rivet press, and I have some dies, cutting dies that will cut that out, and I would like a really nice clean cut on that. If you don't, I would recommend possibly an X-Acto knife to try and cut that out. Trying to use scissors in this small of a space inside a bag is quite difficult. So I am just going to punch it out, but otherwise I would go in, not on this table, but on a cutting mat, and then go through and cut with my X-Acto knife cut out that hole. So we need that hole cut out. Once it's cut out, then we can install the rest of the piece. So I have my hole cut. Just to quickly show you what I use, I have these press plates that I use with my one of my rivet presses, and then I got these off of Amazon. They're just a box of dies that I can cut holes with. So you want to make sure, the one thing I forgot to mention before is you want to make sure that you get your hole big enough. When we draw on the inside of this, we're on the inside as well as we have a pen line. So you might need to cut out to the outside of the pen line, but you don't want to go so far that you're not covering the hole anymore with this piece. The other thing I forgot to put in, and I may just do it now, I'll put this aside. So yeah, I got these off of Amazon, and I got both of mine from Minkus Margo on Etsy. And the plates, these flat plates, I got from Debbie at Doodabug Dreamer. So on the outside, we have, where are my things? So we have the square for this one, or the rectangle for this one, and then I need 2 rounded out parts for the screws to go in through. So on either side, I'm going to try and do it near the center. So this is about the center. I'm going to punch holes. I'm just going to grab my hand hole punch, and figure out what size would be best. I think I'm going to use, I'm going to start with that one and see if it's big enough. If not, then I can come back. So I'm going to stick it in the hole, and then I'm going to punch that. And hopefully it comes out. It doesn't all come out, I'll take my snips or my scissors and trim out the rest. And do the same on the other side. As you may have noticed, as I went around and clipped things out, I've also snipped my quilting stitches. So because I'm using bonded, I believe it's bonded poly, I just took my lighter, melted the ends, and then if I push it down with the end, it makes it flat and kind of helps keep it from fraying. Hopefully, once this is on for good, it will keep it from fraying. So just check it again. Now that I've got these things on the side, the cutout on the side, I'm going to check it again. So I put it in the hole, and it looks like it didn't come through on this side. So I need to punch out the hole on this side, or I can take my snips and just try and gently snip out a bit. See if that's any better. Where did there it is. So try it again and see. So we needs a little bit, tiny bit more. And this one needs to go up higher. So, but otherwise it looks pretty good. It's pretty thick up here. Hopefully the screws will keep it in place. So things like this, I also want to get rid of, because that's going to keep it from screwing on flat. Like, it'll keep it from actually lying flat. So I'm going to trim these a little bit more. Trim the top part here. And then I'm going to try it again. So it's just keep trying until you get it. It took a bit of work, but I finally got it so that it'll fit. One of the things I had to do is pull this part of the seam, like I had to open the bag, so I exposed this part of the seam, and like we did here, cutting out the notches to make it less bulky, I had to take the top, like cut back the top seam quite a bit so that it wasn't in the way, because it was in the way. It was quite bulky. So now I'm going to stick this side in. So I'm just going to show you how to get it together. I usually go and apply, I'll take it apart after I'm done, and I will apply a bead of glue I have some that are used for adding like gems and stuff to clothing, so it works on metal. So I've got that in. I've moved fabric away from the edge, and now I'm going to place the back plate on top. Take one of my little screws, put it in the hole, my little screwdriver for glasses, and then just twist that in. Take the other one, put it in the other side, try and get it seated in. Might have to move the plate a bit, feel around so that there it dropped into the hole, I believe. Yes, so the threads are catching. You shouldn't have to, it shouldn't be too hard to put in, and you don't want to strip your screws. So anyways, it's in now. I will eventually take this off, put glue on, put it all back on, put some what is it, the Gorilla Glue in where the screws are so none of it comes apart. So now we can close this up, turn that, and that is the exterior of our bag done. Moving on, it's time to go back in and close up this pocket. So I pull out the pocket. Because we did the stitching the way we did on the sides, we have a really nice edge. So you just put your fingers in and pull it to the side. I'm going to clip it just to make sure it stays where I want it to stay. And now I'm going to stitch across the bottom of the pocket. I'm going to use 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to use my 3.5 stitch length because I really want the pocket to stay closed. Trim these off. Now I'm going to tuck the pocket back in to the bag and the lining. So I've got it tucked back in mostly. There. And I'm going to close the pocket, and now I'm going to push everything back in the bag. And then I'm going to close that. If you have any spots, like I had used a pen, silver pen for marking, make sure you take the markings off. So now we're going to set this aside. Cute little bag with the piggies. I'm going to set this aside and we're going to work on the wrist strap. And we're on to the last step, putting the wrist strap together. So I have put a piece of double-sided tape down to the center. I'll take the paper off the back of the tape, double-sided tape, and now I'm going to fold the long raw edges into the center, approximately. I haven't drawn a line down, I'm just trying to eyeball it. So I get these turned in. Now I'm going to flip it the other way and bring these in, butting it up right up against the others, the one that's already stuck down. And there we go. So the pattern has stitching just down the center on either side of this. I want to have something slightly different. So I'm going to do 2 rows of stitching. I want to do one at 1/8 of an inch and one at 1/4 of an inch. That should keep it down, and I think it'll look nice. So anyways, I'm just going to do that. I have it set on a 5 stitch length, and yeah, I'll just whip around and do the 4 lines of stitches, and then we'll carry on. Ran out of bobbin. All right, winding a new bobbin, and then I'll be back. bobbin's been rewound or been wound and put in. I took out all the stitches that I had done. I'm going to try and put the needle down in exactly the same spot. That way I don't have a start and stop part way down. There wasn't that many stitches in that I couldn't do this. So I'm going to put my needle down in the first hole, hold my tails, go forward and back a couple, and then go forward. I'm going to go a little slower, trying to hit the holes. So decide on your wrist strap which end you like better. I like this end better. So I'm going to take this end and fold it in this way. I want to have about an inch fold over. So that's about an inch fold over. I'm going to mark a half an inch before I put the swivel hook in. I'm going to mark up a half inch from that end. I will pop the swivel hook on the end, trying not to get my silver marking pen all over the place. So right into that crease, tuck the end that I don't want to be seen right up to the swivel hook, and then push this down, trying to keep everything in line. I'm going to put a clip in either side while I get ready to punch a hole. So I'm going to use my hand hole punch. I will set the rivet with my rivet press, but for the hole I'm going to try and figure out, okay, so that one is about the size I need. So I'm going to turn it one more. Actually, I'm going to go with this little bit smaller one. So that's about the hole I need. Put my mark directly in the center under that hole, or under that hole punch piece, and then press. Move it around a little bit, and it's gone all the way through. So I'm going to take this post, I do it from the front, put it through the hole, clean up the extra bits that it popped out. Take so these are double cap rivets, so take the cap, I've already put the post in, and pop the cap on. Now off camera, I'm going to do this off camera, I am just going to go set the rivet, and then we can hook it onto the bag and we're done. All right, there we go, rivet has been set. There's our wrist strap. Find your D-ring inside the bag and clip it on, and there you go. So there we have the Vamp. It's a wristlet. It's not actually part of the name, but anyways. So it closes with a, mine is a twist lock. Got a handle on it, inside zipper pocket. It's got some nice quilting on the front and the back. So this, just a reminder, this is the package that I got. I ordered a subscription box from Seems Legit, and it came with the lining fabric and the faux leather and all of the hardware that I needed. It also came with the box corner template. So everything I needed to finish this except the sewing machine and the thread. Yeah, it even had the zipper and the zipper slider in there. So it's a cute little wristlet. I love that you have this area for a design. And it was really cool that it all came in one package. So if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you could subscribe to my channel, that would be awesome. And hope to see you again.